Hello, everybody. Yay for a brand new opening theme song for us. Yay.
Mhm.
So, for those of you who didn't join in our last episode, nice to meet you. My name is Nicole Goldstein. I am the community manager for Progress.
I'll go next. I'm Hinal. I am the senior product marketing specialist here at Progress, and I work with Phil and Nicole on the daily, and we're really excited to share our thoughts with you.
And my name's Phil. I am the let's say, well, product marketing director. That's my real job, and then my pretend job is an AI strategist. But I get to go around and speak to customers, partners, industry peers. Last week was with regulators, and kind of discuss what's going on in the AI market and what kind of proactive steps you can make in terms of operationalizing AI within your business. And it is a privilege that I get to do this, and then come back and share some thoughts with the team. So here we are today.
Here we
So
are.
Nicole will be asking us, will be testing me, I guess, on what I've learned over the last month. I'll get Hinal in there as well. She'll be asking some questions. If you've got any questions, then please feel free to pop them into the chat. We'll love to speak to those. If we can't get to all the questions, we'll try and then pick them up and answer them. I think I did one on YouTube the other day. I put an answer in there to a comment that we had from our guests. But yeah, that's kind
I
of
would
me.
I would like to just add that I feel like Phil's job is a knowledge collector. He goes out in the field, learns all these cool new AI things, and Nicole and I come back and have 100 questions or insights on top of his insights. So that is more definite of what Phil does.
And we do have a rip-roaring group chat just throwing articles at each other and videos and stuff
Mhm.
like that so we can
Yes.
consume everything. But before
Yeah.
we get started, I have to say April 2nd was Autism Awareness Day. So I just want to shout out all of our friends and neighbors and loved ones that have autism. Happy love for you today and every day. Love. But why don't we go ahead and get started? We actually had in the Progress community somebody add in some questions, and they really helped spark us off for today. So I actually have a printer still back in those days.
Ah,
So I'm just going to read this
This is going
verbatim.
retro.
This is from Joachim Bakers, and it
okay.
is an industry breakthrough withstanding, where we go from autocomplete on steroids to actually learning and intelligence. What's the next major direction we can expect business will have to deal with? Swarm based intelligence? A shift from large generalist models to small specialist models? Domain expert models that upset data lakes? And Phil, I know you had definitely an opinion on this.
Yeah, I mean, the all of the above would be the cop out answer, right? We'll have to deal with all of the above, right? But if we wanted to look at this, AI has gone beyond the autocomplete stage, right? It is now being used for novel discoveries in multiple different fields. Just 2, 3 days ago, it was announced that it broke through a very old geometry problem, a novel discovery in that field. It has made novel discoveries in genetics and with AlphaFold. It has discovered new forms of chemistry, and it will continue to assist solving some of these challenges. I think there was a maths challenge that was solved this week as well, over 100-year maths challenge that was solved. And I believe an X Prize as well, something like that as well.
Did it find the
So,
end of pi? That's the real question. I need the end of
well,
pi.
if it does, then again, but it really is about that we're seeing an emergence of intelligence within these models, right? They don't have agency, so they're not acting on free will. Whatever anybody might tell you, the human being is very much still the agent of change, right? Whether it's via a prompt or an instructional rule that we give an agent to say, take this action when this happens, it is the human being that is doing that. The agent will decide on the tools and the skills available to it, what it model suggests that it should do. But there is that emergent intelligence. If we look at what comes next, well, there was actually a leak this month from Claude with the talk of Mythos and Capybara, right? Two new models that are coming out that they describe as a step change in coding, a step change in cybersecurity, and academic reasoning was the other one. From their like current flagship models, right? And already people are building stuff and experimenting with this and building applications themselves that we wouldn't have been able to do before. Myself this week, I built two applications, business applications in 45 minutes that, okay, they're not hardened, they're definitely not scalable, but it gives the view of what you can achieve with these tools. Because now you can have subject matter experts or domain experts or just a human idiot like me create applications that are now useful for their colleagues. And now we could take that further. If we have a system where we have guardrails and we have security and we have governance baked into that, and then we connect those applications to those systems, now we can start controlling that and scaling it and governing that application, right? And now we can start, instead of it just being useful for one team, it can be useful for the entire organization. And so that's what we're going to start to see more in business as people embrace this kind of democratization of development from idea to application. That used to be the kind of IT world. I think that's going to start to cross over. And in fact, actually, there was an article just today that I saw around actually IT in certain instances can be a blocker to this new world, right? Because they're used to dealing with 50 years worth of deterministic outputs that these systems will give. And LLMs aren't that. They're random. They're non-deterministic, and so it's a step change for everyone. But yeah.
And I see like I came up with the phrase like all models are moving to like God tier, right? Every model that comes out is so significantly better than the other model. I think you were saying the other day, like the model that you're using today is months old. And what they're doing right now, if you buy for the super high tier of it, you are exponentially able to do different things. You made a map of your brain, which I've seen. I've seen the map of Phil's brain.
Yeah, one part of it at least, anyway. One neurodivergent tweak of the part of the brain. But no, I mean, it really allows you to experiment, right? You have an idea, you tell it in a natural language fashion. Hey, look, this is my idea. I want it to kind of do this. Here's an example of what it could look like where my colleague did something, and I kind of like that branding and kind of like those visual UI elements. Can you use that? Oh, there's this presentation I saw the other day. Can I break that down and give that to you and turn that into part of the application? And so, Nicholas, welcome. But we're just at the start of this agentic journey, right? We're probably 3 or 4 months into to these tools being able to do this. So we are like we haven't even touched the surface of what these things are capable of yet. And now with these new models coming in, I think to Nicole's point, the way to look at it is if you're using free access to AI, you're probably 12 to 18 months behind in terms of models and like prioritization of access to the larger models, right? Or the more capable models. Paying $20 a month, maybe 6 to 12 months behind. If you're on that max thing, then you're still 4 to 6 months behind the frontier models that are in the AI labs today. So the likes of OpenAI and Anthropic and people like that developing the actual models today, we're probably 4 to 6 months behind them, which is why when they come out and go, I think we've got this model, I think it's a step change, but actually we want to secure it in Claude's case, because even though it's really good at cybersecurity, it means it's really good at cybersecurity, which is both
Black hat.
sides of that coin, right?
Mhm.
So that's
used to
why
work
they're
in
kind of,
Yeah, I used to work in cybersec and the black hats. You gotta be
yeah,
careful of the black hats.
exactly. So
I think
But
that was on. Sorry, go ahead, Nicole.
no, you go ahead.
I think that was on the article, to Phil's earlier point where it had the leaked kind of material from Anthropic this week talking about Mythos and all the other new models that they're coming out, but how the question isn't just what's coming next, it's whether the governance and guardrails can keep up with how fast the models are moving. So I think Mythos is a perfect example of that tension, right? Because the model leaked before that governance conversation even started, which I know they were doing early access and previews with customers, and those conversations were needed and being had. But I think that's one important point from that leaked information that we have to catch on to, because they themselves are saying we need to be prepared for what
Yeah.
can happen in the future, and it is something they predict will happen. So they are also enabling cybersecurity organizations to defend themselves and to putting the technology in their hands so they can see what vulnerabilities are being predicted and what they could do in the future to
Yeah.
help.
When you talk
That's
about
really
sorry.
important. No. I was
Cut
just
you
saying
off.
it's just really important, right? You have to understand that AI is one tool in the enterprise's box of tools that we have, right? And to come back to that whole deterministic result, right? So you're used to your software doing the thing that you want it to do when you want to do it. AI has the ability to choose what it wants to do when it wants to do it. So if you don't put guardrails around those choices, if you decide that you're just going to let it go free, a la Maltbook and OpenClaw and stuff like that, right? Then you can get bad things that happen further down the line, right? And not just one, right? Because it's not like a human being who's sit there and it's like, right, and then does a bad action and he's created that bad action. But now you're programmatically able to scale that. So that bad action could be 10,000 bad actions, right?
I saw this. Well, I took a class that was actually about critical thinking in the age of AI, where what we did was, instead of critically thinking, we came up with prompts to make AI critically think for us. But one of the things that was really interesting is when I think of prompts, I do it in a very specific way. I want this output. This is the information I'm putting in. But this really had interesting guardrails in it. It's like, I don't want you to think beyond here. This is the scope of what I want from
Yeah.
you. I want your information delivered like this, and you can't go beyond here. I was only doing the middle part of this long prompt that helped put those guardrails
Yeah.
in place. It was an interesting learning opportunity just because I had never even thought to do that.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
go ahead, Phil.
now you're going.
It's funny because you brought that up, Nicole. I was just doing that with Claude this week. So I finally tried out Claude. I know I'm late to the party, everyone, but I was setting up my account and everything, and I was just looking to see what prompts are available so I can, tie it in my Claude. I've been using other LLMs, so they already know me, my who I am, what I do, and everything. So I was trying to make Claude as efficient as I could, and I came across this prompt where it said, um, AI and LLMs are very susceptible to making sure that you like them, so they come back with answers that are curated, nice, agreeable. Like it will never tell you. It's funny because I saw this one meme and it's like it will never tell you it's against you, or it will be like, oh, you did that, it's okay, you did it because of this reason, right? To validate you. And so I was like, I want to be challenged, right? And so part of that critical thinking aspect, it's what am I doing wrong? What are the gaps? What do I need to think about that maybe isn't mentioned in my input or my prompt, and even the output that it gives me? So I went to Claude and they have like a personal preferences section in there. And I told it, you need to push me to be more critical. You need to not agree with me. You need to think in the sense of what I do in the context of what I do. And if there's gaps and any type of gaps you can find in my prompt and the output, you need to make me aware of it and how I could build better materials, whether I could build better prompts, whatever that may be. So people have used that, and it's been really nice because now at the whenever I send a prompt and it gives me a response back at the end of the section, it'll be like, but this is how much I think you could do better in this area or that area, and it talks about my outputs and my prompts all together. But that's one thing I think is very helpful, and like in prompting, it's very important that we make sure that you are being challenged, that the output is being reviewed, and you are going back and refining your prompts and your outputs at the end.
So you're touching on the pre-prompting, right? So
Mhm.
you're providing a level of guardrails to the AI and how you want it to return or do the task that you're asking it for. There is a
Mhm.
system prompt that goes before that. That's provided by the AI vendor of choice that you use, whether it's Claude or ChatGPT. But there's another layer of well, there's a few layers of other governance techniques that you can use. You can use MCP connectors to build out the rules and the best practices so that you can get the same output time and time again, right? Same result. You can that'll allow it to access skills in the manner that you want it to access those skills, right? So yes, you can use my browser, but no, you can never go to a banking site, that type of thing, right? But you can, what you should be doing within business and the enterprise is then putting all of that in practice, absolutely. But then at your data layer in your business, you should be providing guardrails, governance, security, so on and so forth around the data that you share with the LLM. Not just in terms of governance and like control and stuff like that, but also like how much data does the prompt actually need to ask this question? Because filling up context windows is great to provide it with context, but too much context will burn through your token availability, right? Or will end up you're burning those tokens and it's going to cost you an absolute fortune to do. So you need to take a combination all the way through, and that's why governance, not as an afterthought, but as like in the planning stage. So building out your prompts, building out the right data platform to kind of support the data going to and from, governing where the agent can use the different tools and putting security around those, putting role-based or security-based, query-based access controls around your data and around the infrastructure that you have that supports those applications is incredibly important. And by accident, you're creating this neuro-symbolic AI. You're creating an intelligent system that learns with you, right? Because you can improve your prompts, you can improve your MCP connectors, you can improve your the use of your data and how that works. But all of this is now enabled for people in business to try today. Right? So, and it's removing barriers to innovation, in my opinion. Right? So, I think you're going to start to see people who have ideas, and if they're using it correctly, be able to take those ideas and scale those within their organization. Right? But it's a combination of using these great new tools with that deterministic guardrail system around it. And I'm actually excited to see what people can then come up with, because I think the pool of people that are able to build software has traditionally been very, very limited, because you've got to go and learn computer science. You've got to go and learn how to code. Now you've got to go and learn how to use the tool. And now you've got to go and imagine the scenario that you're going to do. You've now got business people who can go, hey, look, I want to do this every day. It takes me ages and it's so repetitive and I have to do this thing every day, right? Or even once a week, right? I have a news report that aggregates all the news for our colleagues. And I'll conservatively say it saves me an hour a week, right? So that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's about $5,000. So that will pay for a max version of a tool, right? For that employee. Well, that's just one task that I do in a week. Now imagine what other things that I can now bring to bear against this, and how even if they're just running once a week, or once a day, or once a month, right, and once a quarter, you can automate those tasks and get reliable results because you're putting those guardrails around it. Just for one person, you're talking tens of thousands of dollars, and now scale that across your business. And that allows me now to do all sorts of other weird and wonderful things, like, say, building these applications and experimenting and talking to more people, right? Because I've got more time to dedicate to those activities, which probably deliver more value than just that low-level task that I would run every week, that I go collect all that data and stuff.
So you're making me think of one concept, and you were talking about, there might be a point where there is too much data. You haven't narrowed down the focus of the LLM. There's actually an exercise that we're going through at Progress about making our data AI ready. Because, for example, if an LLM is scraping documentation for a product, it might be scraping content for version 3 when we're on version 15.
Yep.
And so, like, we're going through this whole process to say, what's still relevant? What is this clean? Is this easy to read? And it is an exercise, but like, there was one of our products has archived over 1,000 knowledge base articles that we're gonna give everybody trash because they were all so old and outdated. So I think that there's a part of that too, is that we hear it all the time: crap in, crap out, right?
Yeah. What you're getting towards there is translating that explicit knowledge of knowing that version 3 isn't the version you should be looking at, it's version 13 or whatever, right? Well, that you have in your head. The machine doesn't have that. The AI doesn't have that. And so what you're doing is creating rules, again, guardrails for how it should act, right? So that it gets to the right answer every time for people. And so there's a level of understanding that you have to kind of figure out how to communicate with the machine, right, at scale, all the time, getting those repeatable results.
I think, Phil, you had also just written a blog about deterministic decisions. Do you want to share that?
The 50 years of determinism.
Yeah, I thought that was a good spin that you put on that.
Yeah, so if you're in software, or if you've been in software, or if you've used computers like I have since I was about 3 years old, right? Pre-DOS, I think it was. Right?
Don't date yourself. Don't date yourself. We're all 20
Well,
years old.
and I turned 20 last week, right? So,
Happy
right.
birthday.
So 20 again. But again, it comes to that point. You've been using software all of your life, and you expect it to do a job every time you do it. And this non-deterministic system has now come along. This thing that's really still really new, right? It's what, 3 years old, right? And we're trying to leverage this in every imaginable use case that you can think of, from fraud prevention to crime to who was it the other day? They were looking at the regulatory impact of the data, right? Medicine, chemistry, physics, science, the humanities, right? The list goes on. But we're all still learning how, right? There was a take the other day that was quite interesting. I thought we keep blaming AI for certain things, right? That AI shouldn't really have the blame for. So the Claude example, right? If it was genuinely an engineer, right, that made a mistake, then people were blaming the AI for that mistake. Well, how's that the AI's fault if it was a human being's? And in fact, actually, it's still a human being's fault if it's AI. Because we program it, we make it, right? We're the ones that instruct it. It doesn't do anything unless it's triggered by something, but a prompt, a rule, an instance, a time, whatever rule you set up, the human being sets up. It doesn't have agency. It's not going off and doing its own thing, right? And we conflate then the mistake that we get from the result as it's AI's fault. And in fact, it's very human being, right? It is very human, the result that we get. We've had people say that AI is killing critical thinking, right? Well, I'll give you many examples of where humans have lacked critical thinking for thousands of years,
Don't make
right?
me get political, Phil. I'm not going to
No,
get
there's no
political.
there's no politics in it. There's no politics. It is just how we behave, right? How we've ordered society, how we educate people, right? Because some of the skills, what we call critical thinking, are really like media literacy, or understanding of where information comes from, how facts come to be, how to experiment, hypothesize, experiment, and then turn into a theory, right? And not theory as in the colloquial sense, but theory in the scientific sense. So yes, the apple drops because of gravity, thanks to Newton's theory of gravity, right? The We keep conflating the mistakes that it makes with the mistakes that we make. And really, AI isn't that. AI is both a mirror and a lens to the human condition. It is all the bias that you have in there. So if you ask it to create a picture of a doctor and it creates a male doctor 99% of the time, right? Then that's the human bias in the data that it's received, right? It is simply a reflection of who we are at the moment, right? Before it gets agency and starts thinking for itself and free will and all that jazz, right? Um, the but it can also be a lens to exasperate positive and negative aspects of that human condition. So if you're not naturally a critical thinker, AI is not going to help that, because you've got to learn the skill, right? And so when I see people talk about AI and it making mistakes and that's terrible and so on and so forth, it's like, yeah, no, that people built that.
That makes me think of that video that you shared. There was facial recognition software. A crime had been done in a state, and they used facial recognition software to target the person who had committed the fraud. And it recognized a person who actually was states over, states away. But the human part of it, normally police would do investigative work to verify that this is correct. They completely skipped that step, and they were like, AI facially recognizes her and she went to jail, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she spent 5 months in jail in another state over. And again, that wasn't down to the AI telling her that she's going to jail. That was a human being that decided, okay, she's committed the crime. Are you going to do any further investigation? Well, not at the moment, because we think she's committed the crime. And then when it was later proved that she couldn't have committed the crime, she was released. She's lost her home, lost her dog. And people went, "Wow, look at this, it's terrible AI." It's like, no, 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 no. There's a whole host of people that have made mistakes behind this, right? The lack of governance and guardrails and procedures and policies in place to stop that from happening are staggering, and it boggles the mind, frankly, that this poor woman had this happen to her.
Well, I think that's
Well,
important too, right? Because as we scale these AI and LLM models throughout different parts of our lives, our society and stuff, the question then comes, are we preparing and doing enough to educate people on how to efficiently and ethically use AI? Like, is that being taken into consideration? I mean, obviously, it's a big discussion, and I'm not saying we need to start that open
no,
Pandora's box here, but it is something that comes to mind because this was an effect directly on a real human person's life, right? Like 5 months in jail. I can't even imagine what happened in her personal life with a career or family or what you had to go through emotionally. And that was based off of one person or a group of people not knowing how to use AI correctly and to validate the responses and outputs you get. And it's very important because I feel like we stress the message of the human in the loop very much. And sometimes it can get overshadowed, right? Because you hear it so much and you're like, okay, yeah, we understand human in the loop. But in real case scenarios like this, that's when you see why that human in the loop is so, so important. Because if there was someone that was able to say, hey, this just looks off, or if we're validating this against, where she was at this timestamp according to when the crime was done, you could have exactly seen that that could have not been the person because she was states away doing something else. And there's activity and recording of her doing something else. So having that cross reference, having that human there to validate that response would have saved so much time and effort, both on the person and the organization's time, right? So yeah, I think it's very important to keeping that in mind.
And so maybe it's the educated human in the loop, right? Or
Mhm.
the critical thinking human in the loop. Maybe that becomes an interview technique. Like we need to find the critical thinkers to help with these things. But
Mhm.
it also comes back to kind of skills training and general education, right? For children, right? We're teaching them a series of facts and figures about history and science, and mathematics, and so on and so forth. Certainly at the elementary level into kind of high school level, right? We're not teaching them about critical thinking. We're not teaching them about media literacy. We're not teaching them about AI literacy. We're not teaching them about these tools that are going to be way, way more important than knowing that the Battle of Hastings was 1066, right? Or facts and figures are now, even before AI, right? With Google, with the access of Google, we pretty much had the collective knowledge of man in your palm with your mobile phone, right? Well, now AI can take that one step further, right? Find relationships within that knowledge and so on and so forth. But being able to discern fact from fiction, being able to realize that, okay, these tools can and will make mistakes currently in the model and fashion that they're developed in. And being able to translate that into real world skills that you can bring into business, right? It is really important. We talk about AI enablement in progress, right? Like how do we get people to share what they've learned with their colleagues and see like what mistakes they've made, and then how can we correct those, and what blind spots have we got, and then okay, let's roll this out to more people, and so on and so forth. It's it's just, I think it's a change in how we think and how we kind of structure education and skills-based training in the workforce, to not look at necessarily, oh, this is the fact you need to remember, but this is how this thing really works to remember.
Mhm.
And this is how to look at this critically through the lens of, okay, I'm discerning from an op-ed to a research paper. I'm discerning from a talking head on YouTube to a professor of mathematics, right? So understanding the source, understanding the bias within the source, being able to kind of, I always love it when people say, oh, Phil, how do you read an academic paper? Well, I might not read the whole academic paper. I don't need to understand how the experiment went. Let me understand like the abstracts, the conclusion, the kind of measured group, right? So like the methodology, and I can get an understanding of what that's trying to communicate. If it's a well-written paper, right? You might have to look a bit deeper in some cases and go, hey, look, can you just help? But it, but that's because somebody just told me that that's how you read an academic paper really quickly, right? This is how to get this
Mhm.
key information out of this. So when I get an AI suggest to me, oh, Phil, I've got this source, it's really good, it's an academic paper, I don't worry that I'm going to have to read 40 pages of somebody's work. I just go, okay, let's find the abstract, let's find the conclusion, and let's find the methodology, right? And so then you can kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, I get exactly what they're talking about, right? I wouldn't be an expert on it, but I will understand the key kind of takeaways from it. So yeah.
I was having fun with the critical thinking prompts in that class, because I have my biases, my family has their biases, and I put in one of their biases in the critical thinking prompt. Is this correct? And then it was like points for, points against, neutral point of view. But the points for their argument were like, these are completely come from polarizing opinion sites and not from any data.
Yeah.
The ones for my opinion were like, here is this factual data. And so in the chat of the class, they're like, how's this working out for you? I was like, I realized my mother is wrong and I feel validated.
Yeah, I mean, again, I jokingly shared with you, didn't I, a comedian, Dara O'Brien, who's an Irish comedian, but he trained at university in mathematics, right? So he has a bit of a scientific lens, and he always talks about media literacy, and it's the same for like AI literacy, right? It's like news and broadcasters, especially like the BBC or public broadcasters, want to give like a balanced view, right, of the world. But then go, right, okay, we've got this guy on from NASA who's going to talk about this new space station, and it's a really good space station, okay? Yet we think it's going to be really good as well. Okay, awesome. Now for balance, let's turn to Barry, who thinks the sky is carpet, right? And he's like, what are they talking about? They're not going to be able to hook a space station on some carpet. And you're like, and they go, yeah, Barry, yeah. That's very good. Yeah, very balanced interview. It's a very balanced interview. Sources of information and where you get those from, again with AI, right? You've got to kind of look at, am I getting the Barry response here, or am I getting the NASA response, right? And so you've got to validate the output. You've got to make sure you put guardrails in place. You can say, look, ignore all of those domains, right? Or take your source of information from here. You can say those things in prompts, in pre-prompts and stuff like that. But again, it's about learning how to use the tools effectively, understanding their limitations, right? Because these aren't like an oracle of all knowing, all seeing, all always all right, right? So understanding that and bringing that back. And again, if you want to scale AI in your business, make sure that you're mechanizing the human knowledge about that and about your world and about the thing to the machines using a rules-based approach that gives you that deterministic if this then that.
So I like that you're talking about bringing it back and applying it to the business, because one of the other questions from Joachim is it's becoming easier than ever to ensure that AI is communicating with customers in the right brand voice.
Yeah.
What's your take on aligning with an organization's brand values?
So I had a look at this, and I was just thinking about brand voice, brand value. I'm actually in a graduate program where we're talking about how important brand value is for a company, right? So there was 2 lessons or articles that we were kind of going over. One was the rise and fall of Jay Peterman. I think he made coats and clothing and stuff. And the other one was JetBlue. And so the rise of JetBlue during a time where minor airlines weren't really making it in a domain with a lot of the larger airlines that had been dominating for years. So both of them told the story of how important your brand value is, right? Brand voice is something that's the top layer. So it kind of can exemplify your brand value. And I think that's what AI does in this scenario and instance, right? So you take, let's say, something from your brand value and you tell your brand and you tell your AI, can you exemplify this into brand voice? So it really is about really understanding and defining those integral brand values. And that's something a human has to do. That's something an organization has to do. And AI will help you kind of speak those into material, into content, and kind of spread them to everyone. And so one example I was really thinking of, right, to kind of show what the difference is when you check into a hotel. So say a person checks into a hotel, really tired at night, 11 p.m., right? Has a presentation in the morning, 7 a.m., and the room smells like smoke or something. And yours, the two different hotel scenarios that I'm giving here is one is that you're staying at a regular hotel, right? And when you're staying at a luxury 5-star hotel, the regular hotel will tell you, if you go to a chat bot, it will tell you, hey, like we put a ticket in, someone will be on your case, closes the ticket, right? That's it. That's all the chat support you get, everything. And you're like stressed, you have to get up in the morning, present. If you're staying at a hotel that values and looks from the customer's point of view, what is important, aligns its every action with the brand value, it will tell you in the chat bot, I know, like, you are stressed. Its AI will be trained to tell you, like, hey, you're stressed. You have something very important in the morning. I am getting my night manager on it. We'll change rooms for you. We'll make sure that you are able to be safe and comfortable here tonight with us. And so I think that example really shows that it's the same tone but completely different judgment. You see that if your brand values aren't precise enough to kind of align a new human employee to, they're not precise enough to align AI with too. So the problem that I feel like most companies face isn't the AI alignment piece. It's like that they never defined their values with specific specificity to align anything to them, human or machine. So you really have to train your AI in that case, right? With your brand values to make sure they line up.
And yeah, so it, what I was getting at there is taking your all of the facets, all of the different tools that you use in your business to express yourself to the market, and giving that to the AI in a programmatic way that says, hey, look, if I'm talking about X, it's always going to be this template. And if I'm talking about Y, we're always going to use this language. And if I am writing a blog, it is going to use these style markers and so on and so forth. And breaking that down so that you are able to deliver that time and time again, get that repeatability. Once you get that repeatability, you can then start giving AI not free reign, but more output driven by AI, like customer chatbots or what dynamic website generation or image and content creation, right? Because now the AI goes, oh, okay, when you refer to this, you always call it XYZ. You never call it anything else, right? So you don't abbreviate it. You don't do anything like that. We're always going to do that. Or when a customer says they've got a problem, this then raises up the level of concern. Okay, so I need to pull these dependencies, I need to pull these skills and tools in. So it might raise a ticket to the customer success manager as well as raising a ticket to the technical support line, right? So that then the customer success manager can follow that ticket and then contact the customer after that, right? Or even it's a virtual customer success manager. So once the ticket is resolved, it then follows up with them and say, hey, just want to make sure, was everything all right with that service that you got there? Was everything resolved? Can we do this? That's what we mean by being able to create a customer voice. All of that is just rules.
I have to
This,
say,
that, this, right?
yeah, and in some ways, I think that it would outperform people. I was actually I needed to put in a help ticket with a third party software that I work on, and somebody responded back to me in the most colloquial, informal way possible, which sounds like a good thing. But what it was, oh,
Mm.
that's oh, that's crap. They were like, oh, that's crap. Try this. That thing didn't work. I was like, oh, it
Yeah.
didn't work. Oh, that's strange. And then that was it. They didn't say, "Oh, that's strange. Try this instead." They were just like, "Oh, that's strange." Like, what can I do with that? I can't do anything with that.
Yeah. Yeah, so it does offer a layer of like repeatability, raising your brand voice to many people, right? If you've only got a technical team of 5, right, and you're getting 1,000 tickets a day, you probably want to sort your product out. But also, 2, you want to make sure that people are being serviced correctly, right, and that they're receiving the right advice for your product. So, and like I say, AI won't do that out of the box. You have to give it that information, and the way you give that information is by giving the AI the rules and the policies and the governance that you would expect the human being to follow anyway. You're just translating it to the machine. This is what we talk about when we have human-centric AI, right? To deliver business outcomes. You're only going to get that because the human being has put a lens over it first and said, here's my workflow, here's where I can insert AI, and this is what I want AI to deliver for me.
Somebody had mentioned once that it was like training a new employee.
Yeah, I've
Mhm.
said that many times. I said,
It was you I probably stole it from.
yeah. I said it the other week. I was at a conference on regulatory technology, and I said, look, you wouldn't give a new employee free access to all of your deepest and darkest company secrets, right? And unfettered access to IT systems, financial systems, HR systems, and so on and so forth. You have rules in place to stop that. You also have policies in place that they sign to say that they're not going to do that. You train them on how to use your tools appropriately. AI isn't that different. The only difference is if it makes a mistake, it can make it 10,000 times. Right? It can delete countless number of files on your PC, and you'll chase to go and unplug your PC and throw out, or just so you can retain the data, right? Happened at senior executive level at one of these AI providers when they tried OpenClaw, right? So it's just as important to spend that time, and you can do it dynamically, right? I'm not saying stop AI, create all the rules, no. I'm saying use AI, create those rules as you're using it, and then start expanding its scope, right? Okay, now it's following my IT rules and security. Awesome. So I know it's not going to do anything to damage me, right? Or it's not going to leak anything. Okay, so let's give that to more people then. I can go and give that to Terry in HR, and give it to Dave in product marketing, and I can give it to whoever in wherever else in the business, because I know now it's got these rules around it and it's safe. And then you go, okay, so we want to use this for marketing. Okay, well, let's get the brand voice and let's put the rules in there, but let's see what it's capable of first, right? All the while knowing that it's human beings that are responsible for the actions. You're not going to be able to stand in front of a judge or in front of a regulator and say, hey, it's not my fault, or AI did it. That's them. And then they're like, oh, so who programmed the AI to do that then? Who prompted the AI to do that? Who didn't secure the AI so that it would deliver that? Oh, that was you. Okay, then don't pass go, don't collect 200, right?
You're in jail
Um,
for 5 months and you're going to lose your
exactly,
house and your
right?
dog.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully not in that case, right? But this is why I keep hammering this neuro symbolic AI approach. This taking, yes, the advantages of the implicit knowledge that you have in your business, the creative, the constructive, the able to think in a higher level abstraction, human beings that are your top employees, and giving them access to the latest and greatest of the models and the providers that are out there, and combining those two, right? Yeah, getting those humans with their rules, getting the AI with its pattern recognition, its creativity, its ability to abstract lower level tasks to allow for a higher level order of thinking with some of your most talented people in your business. um, and you can start that today. And in fact, I advocate you do start that today, because if you don't, you you're going to be left behind really, really quickly, and you're going to find yourself in a place um, where you look up, and much like, I think it was the Nokia CEO, about 6 months before they went out of business, they were at a meeting, and he went, I don't think we did anything wrong. And you're like, you did things wrong. This has been studied, right? You did things wrong. But because you couldn't see beyond your ecosystem, and you couldn't see beyond the deterministic software that you have today, you didn't embrace that, then you'll look around and go, well, everybody's left me behind, right? And so whether you're an individual, whether you're a business, you should be trying to find ways of leveraging AI, so that you can understand what it is capable of, because it might surprise you one day and go, wow, okay, that's the $100,000 saving that I need to hit my number. That's the $1 million deal that I need to close to hit the number. That's the regulation near miss that I caught because I understood what AI did and how it works and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's really interesting times. I still find new stuff to get excited about, and now we'll attest to that. And I'm going to go, just click this link. That's so good.
Every morning I log into work and then Phil has a new AI tool to share with me. I love it. I get to test it out afterwards, and I'm like, hey, let me know if this one if you succeed with this or not.
It's really cool. But yeah, and if you want to, if you want to learn more about some of the stuff that we're doing here at Progress, then please do reach out. We'd love to hear from the audience about this and what your guys' take on some of the stuff that we talked about today, some of the articles that we've shared. We'll put a copy of this up on YouTube as well, so you can add comments there, right? You can at me in LinkedIn, or Hinal or Nichol, right? Join us in our Discord server, which I think's in one corner or the other. I'm not really sure where it is on my side of things, but and join in the conversation, right? We want to hear from you and how you're using an AI and what cool things you've done with it recently. And if you've got questions like we had this week, we'll make sure we obviously paying Nichol too much. He's printing stuff. Does she know how expensive printer ink is? But we'll make sure to answer those questions on screen. Final comment from me, just before we wrap up, and I'll then do the same for Nichol. But yeah, there's been a step change, I think, recently in the AI model's ability, especially when paired with agents, to develop and build tools that can be genuinely useful. If you think AI is a chatbot, or if it's an autocomplete or whatever, if you think that's the case, really start playing around with some of these higher end models. Really start playing around with some of these tools and linking them together. Ask AI how to do it; it'll tell you, right? But I think we're seeing that step change. If it is true and this Mythos and Capybara models come out and there's a step change from there, okay, we just have to run and keep up. But Hinal, what's your final thoughts?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think I said this in the last podcast too, but like Phil was mentioning, he shares a lot of these AI tools he works with, and then he goes into the field a lot, events, conferences, meeting customers, everyone. So he shares a lot with what other people are doing with AI and use cases, and I think it's fairly important and a great source and knowledge sharing opportunity we can have if we share, how we're using AI, what problems we're having when we're using AI, what concerns we're having, things that we can just talk about. I think with the rapid pace of what's being developed, like the Mythos and Anthropic and all these LLMs are developing, every month, if not every week, we'll have or flooding of articles, right, on new developments, new exercises being performed in labs and stuff like that. So I think if there's any use cases, any concerns, any articles that we may have not seen yet, I mean, we are not experts. Phil is, but Nichol and I, we will be more than happy to consume that knowledge and and share back with you what we thought. So it's a two-way channel. But yeah, thanks for listening to us, just the three of us. This feels like a group chat that we're just talking in. So if you have any comments, any other things that you want to address in the next podcast, we'll be more than happy to.
And I always say I am not a technologist. I am a humanist. So I did something unexpected with AI this week with a help from other people. I co-run a employee resource group for progress called Enable, which helps people with invisible disabilities. And someone had reported back that they were colorblind and they had trouble seeing our corporate PowerPoint presentation. Progress has that bright green logo. There's all sorts of reds. And what we did was we actually went through and we put our corporate PowerPoint deck into AI, and we said, what is not colorblind friendly? And it told us not only the slides it was on, but like this specific color needs to be tweaked to this specific color. This contrast needs to be heightened to this. And because of this feedback from AI, we were able to make these changes to our corporate PowerPoint presentation, which helps our brand voice be strong, helps us be more accessible. And it's such a maybe a little win, but it's such a human win, right? If for all of those people who have that color blindness. So you don't just have to use, oh yeah, colorblind. We don't just have to use AI to build apps to help us critical think. We can use it for all sorts of different creative things. We can solve pi. Say, where's the end of pi? Damn it. Yes.
That's
Always
your
on
that's your
about
task,
pie, aren't you?
Nicole.
Always on about pie.
Next
Um,
podcast, Nicole will have an answer.
that's genuinely, Nicole. That is a really cool use of AI, and I think yeah, a good note to end on.
Mhm.
Guys, if you want to follow us, go on to YouTube. You'll be able to find the Friday AI podcast with Phil on progress.com's your Progress's YouTube channel. I think it's Progress Software. And we'll also be posting a blog, a follow up to this, and other stuff
It
throughout the
will
month.
also be available on community.progress.com for those of you who are community members. And if you're not a community member, seriously reconsider that, because I will enjoy memeing you whenever you have questions. So come on over. Come on over. And
Perfect.
with that, have a great, wonderful day. Have a wonderful weekend. Happy Easter, happy Passover to those who celebrate. And again, happy Autism Awareness Day. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.